So I wanted to share with you guys, this is building on the podcast from a couple of days back, pushed up to the archive, where we looked at my top five dungeon crawlers. And briefly, some of the reasons why they made the list. And I'm going to expand it out to top 10, but I wanted to focus on the top 5. So that's up there, searchable in the board game playlist. This kind of worked its way in with some comments to top 3 quick play fantasy board games, dungeon crawling games. Now, I'm all for campaigns. I love Kingdom Death Monster. I love playing Pathfinder the Adventure card game. You know, the leveling up is fantastic. Gloomhaven, I can't get enough of Gloomhaven. But these games are beast mode. These are games that take a commitment to set up, to play, to work your way through. I mean, that's the game mode of them. They're built around that. You can do one-offs and you can kind of experiment that way, but the campaign momentum is important. And when I play those games with a group, it's something that we commit to 2 or 3, 4 times a month. We get together, or if I'm doing it solo, I set it up on my gaming table and I leave it there for a couple of weeks, a month or two. Just finished a Kingdom Death Monster campaign. It was up for a while, and I played an hour or two here and there over about a month and a half. So from that perspective, stepping back, and Dark Souls is another great example. While it's not a campaign game per se, the game is a grind in a good way. I like the mechanics. I like what it does. But to go and fight the mini-boss, the main boss, the mega-boss, realistically, solo 4 characters or with a group 4 characters, taking your time, enjoying the game, not just grinding through it, that's like 5 or 6 hours. That's a commitment. That's a fun commitment. So stepping back and saying my top three fantasy / dungeon crawling board games that can be played in a short amount of time. For those times where you want to disconnect from digital, you want to sit down and an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours tops. Right away, that kills out Mage Knight. Mage Knight was on the list, but Mage Knight is a different experience. Something that plays quick, something that you can sit down and enjoy, something that does not take up a lot of table space, does not take a long time to set up. Play, enjoy, pack it up, and move on. Kind of a quick grab-and-go type game. Now, I'm going to focus on... My 3 picks are focusing on games that are currently in production as of this podcast, as of this vlog. One of them is OOP, out of production, but there is so much new stock of it still in circulation, still in retail for a discounted price, and it's a fantastic game, so I'm bending the rules a little bit there. Number 1, so my top 3. Number 1, Runebound, 3rd edition. This made my other list. Runebound, for me, works for a variety of reasons. Your characters level up. There's 2 amazing scenarios in the core box where you're fighting Margrath, the Dragon Lord, or Vorakesh, a Necromancer. You get to collect magic items. You get to explore the realm. And for me, the selling point is I get to play a character and level up. I get to decide how I'm going to build my character and what path the story is going to take by either fighting monsters. There's points, action points on the board, and they're different colored action gems. You flip one over for experience, you draw a card. Some of those cards are fighting. Some of those cards are social interaction, and some of those cards are quests. So literally, you could say, I'm going to run around the board. Usually you do a mix. But you could run around and say, I'm just going to try and fight everything. I'm going to go classic barbarian. Another player could say, I'm just going to go questing. I'm literally going to just explore the realm and see where we go. A lot of different options. But for me, sitting down to play Runebound, besides the narrative, is the fact that it's a timer-based game. You've got X number of turns to level up, and at certain points in the story, things escalate. And when that timer token reaches the end, Vorakesh comes alive, he's revealed, or Margrath comes alive, the Dragon Lord, and you have to face him. So you just can't grind and grind and grind and grind and grind forever. You have to make certain choices. And when those choices are made, the game is up. In a good way. You get in, you roll some dice, you collect some gear, you have a story, You have an adventure, you fight an end boss, winner takes all, you see what happens. Number 2, Call to Adventure. This is kind of an interesting game. It's a story-based card game where you have a character and you go through 3 different acts in the story. And in the core way it plays, you navigate through the story, and the player that has the most story points at the end wins. But it's not really a winner versus loser. It's more like, what choices do you make? What adventures open up along the way? And at the end, you can look, and each player has a very distinct story that's happened. There's also an adversary mode built into the core where, in addition to telling the story, at the end you kind of take on a boss. And the way the story plays out is by flipping over these cards. Tremendous artwork, tremendous narrative. I mean, really, really pulls you in. You have to then make, what's the best way to describe it? Skill checks, acquisition checks, power checks, by physically picking up these runes, shaking them up. Nice, good plastic, nice markings. Really feel like runes. I feel like I'm a Norse person with that. Roll it out. And the runes interact with the cards that determine levels of success or failure or what happens. And the game progresses pretty quickly. It tells the story quick, maybe about an hour or so. And I like the game in that it plays light, where you're along for the ride. Yes, you're making some decisions. Yes, you're determining where you want your story to go. But so much is literally an open path. What reveals before you? What happens? What decisions do you make? And then at the end, you get to see how things played out. It's like watching a movie unfold. And it nice and compact, box with an actual functional insert. Like everything, it just checks off and really, really works. Number 3, this is OOP, out of print right now, or out of production. But there is enough new stock, enough stock in retail that it is available. Amazon, Miniature Market, other places like that. Warhammer Quest. Warhammer Quest Fantasy, the card game. This is set in Games Workshop's old world. This is when Fantasy Flight had the GW IP to produce the games, and then GW cut that, destroyed the old world, brought out Age of Sigmar, and is now printing Talisman and other games through other distributors. Warhammer Quest, set in the old world, it's a dungeon crawler card game. It's a hybrid game in that you have dice that you roll. So right away, like, Fritz wants those dice. I want to cast those dice. I want to tempt the fates. I want to go chaotic neutral all in and see what happens. By rolling the dice, you have successes, you have augments, but it's also a Euro in that each character has a number of actions that they can take. And when you take that action, the card gets flipped over. You can't use it again until it's refreshed. And there's ways to kind of manipulate and add bonuses to the dice. So it's the best of both worlds. You got to plan stuff out, but you got a little bit of random. What I like about it is it has a story behind it. Each adventure, it's a dungeon delve. It's got a location deck that as you explore, you flip over these new locations which have narratives and which affect the game. You've got a variety of monster cards that attack and move back and forth. And you can also explore gaining loot, items, and leveling up. It is the closest game that I've found to a full footprint dungeon crawler. Think of a massive dungeon crawler. The footprint of that, the miniatures, setting things up, the cards, the dice, the story, the overlord. This game does it in a small footprint card-based game. I mean, it's really, really slick. It's really an amazing system from that perspective. I also enjoy the old world. Long live the old world. I'm glad GW is bringing it back at some point. It does have a campaign where it plays over a number of stories, but you can easily pull out an individual story. It also has a randomized dungeon delve. Can you survive to the end? And it has a variety of the 4 base characters. You could play 2 characters, 3 characters, or 4 characters with a friend or solo. Again, plays very, very fast. A game is about an hour. Set up literally 2 or 3 minutes. Pull out the decks, shuffle them up, populate the location, populate the monsters, pick your characters, ready to go. So for grab and go dungeon crawlers, those are the three on my list. If I'm looking for something small footprint, plays fast, amazing narrative, amazing scope, and I can complete it in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. So just like the other vlog, I'm going to turn it over to you guys, the secret weapon. Fast play dungeon crawlers. Small footprint, fast play, 2 hours or less with amazing narrative. I mean, can we reasonably check off those three things on the checklist?